NC Pork. Good for the plate, great for the state. Welcome back to Bold North State Football Daily right here on the North Carolina Sports Network. I am your host, Mike Waddell. And today, as we always do, we have two guys with me who have lived this game of football at the absolute highest level. First up, that's Coach Tim Brewster, a national champion at Florida State in 2013, former head coach at Minnesota and Charlotte, and one of the best recruiters all time in the history of college football. And then we have our defensive coordinator here on the North Carolina Sports Network, Jim Collins. He is a proud Eline graduate, a Bold North State native from Alamance County, and part of Florida's 1996 National Championship Gator coaching staff, and another guy who has seen it all, from college championships to the NFL. Fellas, let's dive right in. Let's look at NC State rallying from behind at Wake and then Carolina taking care of business. What stands out to you offensively about how the Pack and the Heels are finding their rhythm, or maybe not, here early on in 2025?
Mike, I think that the Wolfpack has been very resilient. They've got a dynamic quarterback that can go make plays with his feet. He's been absolutely outstanding, making throws down the field, just not a dink and dunk type of operation. They're taking some shots and they're completing some explosive. Mike, today it's all about explosive plays. You can look at, in the past we looked at turnovers as the true indicator on who was going to win football games. Now it's who can make the most explosive plays, who can deny the explosive play. And I think that NC State has really done. Dave's got his team playing at a very efficient level. And that's a big win for them on the road. Really good win on the road. Outstanding.
I want to ask you both about something that Coach Brew just said. You're saying that now it's about explosive plays. What leads to the evolution of a true change? It used to be the I formation or the veer back in the day, and then it becomes more of a pro-style offense, and then it's the RPO. What leads to these changes? And because there's rarely anything that is truly new, why does it take so long for people to catch up to that? Maybe, Jim, that's one for you because it's more of an adjustment for the defense than the offense.
Well, I think the big thing that's changed is the running quarterback, and that's created so many issues for defensive coaches. Because if you have a quarterback that can win games with his feet and make yards with his feet, whether it be called quarterback runs or whether it be scrambles on pass plays and advancing the ball. Anybody that watched the Buccaneers play last night is will be very aware that Baker Mayfield made a critical play late in the game with his feet to give them the opportunity to win the game. So anytime you have to defend extra gaps, it creates issues. The other thing that's big is that we used to be able to scrimmage in this room that I'm sitting in right now. We never played anybody that used all 53 yards of the field, and now people are spread out all over the field, and it spreads your defense out, and it puts you in one-on-one situations that you have to be able to handle to be good defensively.
Let me chime in here and say, I was at the Tennessee-Georgia football game on Saturday. Outstanding college football game, but I think it was a great indicator of exactly what we're talking about. Nobody spreads the field like Tennessee does right now, okay? Tennessee is an explosive, big play offensive football team, and for them to score 41 points against Georgia, against an outstanding defensive football team, I think just as a true indicator that the game has totally changed, and that's what it's all about. That game on Saturday was all about the explosive play.
And the guy making a lot of those offensive decisions for the Tennessee Volunteers played here in North Carolina over the past couple of seasons. We're talking about former Appalachian State Mountaineer Joey Aguilar. It's amazing how much better his decision-making is right now because he's playing with a better offensive line and better receivers. And it's kind of like what you guys always say. You're better coaches when you have better players. You're probably a better quarterback when you have better teammates around you who are elevating to that level. And absolutely right now, Tennessee, though they lost that game in a true heartbreaking fashion when the guy missed the field goal at the end of regulation, man, that's going to be a team that's really going to be in contention, I would think, in the Southeastern Conference.
Tennessee's very talented right now, and that was a great game. I enjoyed watching that game, and Brew is correct. Anybody that puts 41 on a Georgia defense is pretty talented. But you have to go back and you got to give the Dogs credit also now that they managed to find a way to win the game, which they've done quite often these days. But again, I'm going to reiterate what I said earlier. Defending the entire field has changed the game so much that it creates lots and lots of issues for defensive coaches. And obviously the really, really good teams around the country are the teams that have enough money to go out and get the best defensive players, and they dominate up front. This game is still won and lost in the trenches, and I know that's a saying that we've all used for many, many years, but it is, if you can block somebody up front and if you can get off blocks and make tackles up front, then you got a chance to be pretty good. And then on defense, if you can rush the passer, you got a chance to be good also.
I think what he's doing right now with Aguilar is absolutely outstanding. The kid is playing at a very high level, and probably higher than most people would expect him to play, particularly making the jump from Appalachian State to Tennessee, to the SEC. There's no way to underestimate the environment in that game, Mike, on Saturday. It was 108,000 people. I mean, it was absolutely crazy. And I just thought that I thought Tennessee was really good, but it just played to exactly what Jim is talking about, is just a style of play. It's just all about being conducive towards explosive plays.
The other factor with Tennessee that you have to deal with is that they average running a play every 25 seconds. And in situational defense, when you're calling defenses, you want to know, especially in college football, with the width of the field and the hashes being that far apart, you want to know whether the ball's on the hash, whether the ball's in the middle of the field. You want to know what personnel is in the game, whether it's 10, 11, 12, whatever, and you want to know the down and distance. Well, guess what? In 25 seconds, when they're on the ball getting ready to snap the football, it's hard to get all that deciphered. So you got to make calls and get lined up and execute very, very quickly on defense to be successful against not only Tennessee, but a lot of people that are using that style of play this day and time.
Tailgate 101 tips from NC Pork and the North Carolina Sports Network. I'm Mike Waddell, along with NC Pork CEO Roy Lee Lindsay. And Roy Lee, you've been watching football a long time, just like I have.
Saying I'm old? I mean, come on now.
I think between the two of us, we probably have a century of watching football. Yep. But everybody who's a big-time football fan loves tailgating, but they're also superstitious. What are your superstitions when it comes to football or tailgating?
I can tell you this: if I was at home watching a big game on the television and the game's coming down to the end of the game, I can't sit in a chair. I will be standing up, pacing around the house. I got my beverage in hand, and I'm screaming at the television, and I look like Surrender Cobra on TV. It is just kind of the nature. When I'm at a game and I've gone and I've tailgated, there are a couple of things that I always do, and maybe they're superstitious, maybe they're not, maybe they're just good hygiene, if you will. I always take an extra shirt if I'm cooking because I'm going to get something all over me. I always take an apron, and I use my apron to try to help me keep my pants clean because I don't want to change pants in the parking lot very often. I change my shoes. I bring a pair of shoes that are comfortable to wear during the day, especially when it's hot. You get sweaty, your socks get sweaty. Change out your shoes and socks. You'll feel a whole lot better when you go to the game. And throw an extra stick of deodorant in the car. Your people sitting next to you will really appreciate it at the ball game. Those are just kind of things that you learn over time, and you don't really think about them until you get there and you spilled barbecue sauce on your shirt, and you're like, God, I don't want to wear this to the game. Now what do I do? And maybe that's a goal of yours, so you can buy a new T-shirt in the ball game and put it on. But I always pack an extra shirt. I pack extra socks and shoes, aprons, things like that to help me stay clean, ready to go. I wear the same visor to every ball game until we lose, and then we get out a different one and we start a new streak and go from there. Things like that, we all have them, and they are as much a part of college football as anything. And I just say, live with them, embrace them. They are a part of who we are and what we do.
Tailgating 101 tips from NC Port and the North Carolina Sports Network. We're just 3 weeks into this 2025 season, but already we have seen two major programs making moves with their head coaches. In week 3, UCLA with Deshaun Foster and Virginia Tech with Brent Pry. I tell you, as a former athletics director, it really pains me to see people making in-season changes. I've never seen the real benefit of that because I think it throws everything into chaos, especially for the kids. I mean, it just rocks their world to the core. And it's just happening earlier and earlier. Am I misguided in thinking that this is not the way to go? That you maybe have a little bit of patience? I mean, what do you really gain from having a coaching change, Brew, in the early part of the season? You were a part of that exact thing last year at Charlotte.
The only advantage I can see, Mike, would be as the athletic director, you getting a jump start on your process. You being able to get out behind the scenes and decide and working through your list. You got your list in your pocket. Every AD in America does. And if there's a coaching change, then as quickly as they can get into the process is what they're trying to do. It's not, give guys a chance to turn things around. I'm not an advocate at all of this. I just, but it's all about perception, fans, and Brent Pry started out 0-3. Deshaun Foster started out 0-3, and Brent Pry had a couple. He had a bad loss the other night to ODU. Okay, and it just the perception of it is not good. The fan base doesn't accept it. Hey, listen, I'm giving a bunch of money. This isn't the product that I'm giving a bunch of money for.
You're taking a huge risk this day and time by making a decision this early because this opens a transfer portal window for players. They've got 30 days now to make a decision whether they want to stay or go. They've got decisions on whether they've only played 3 games, so they can opt out and say, I'm going to redshirt and enter the transfer portal. So it's a huge, huge risk to make a move this early in the season as an administrator. The Virginia Tech job used to be one of the great jobs in the Southeast and in the country. With the Beamers and the chance to win games there. But all of a sudden now the Virginia Tech job is not that enticing anymore. And the reason being is they're at or near the bottom of the ACC in NIL money. So the only teams below them right now are probably 3 private schools, and I don't think Duke is one of those 3 at this point in time. Duke is spending a lot of money. And the other thing that you have to look at with Virginia Tech in Blacksburg is a beautiful, beautiful place and a great place to play. And obviously the atmosphere is outstanding. But the nearest airport to Virginia Tech is in Roanoke, which is over an hour away. So it creates a situation with travel, et cetera, when you start having to go recruit players. Virginia Tech was in it when it was at its best. They owned the 757, which is the Tidewater, Virginia Beach area.
But there's just a bunch of good ballers. There's a bunch of good football players in the 757 in that area, athletic guys. I mean, it started at North Carolina, going and getting a guy like Lawrence Taylor, and bringing him to the University of North Carolina. And then, and then from there, Dre Bly, who was from there, he went up there and recruited. And I think that that's a huge advantage when you have a coach who is from a specific recruiting area and has got all kinds of ties to the area, can walk down and know the lay of the land. And so it really worked well. And I think Jim's just, he's hit it spot on, Frank Beamer had that thing really rolling. And now are they going to be able to recapture the success that they had under Coach Beamer? And I think that with the money constraints, it's not nearly as attractive a job as it once was. Mike, we're talking about this Deshaun Foster. He's a great friend of mine. I recruited him out of high school. I tried to get him to come to the University of Texas. He went to UCLA. You talk about a guy who had a tough job, a bad job. 45-minute drive from campus to the Rose Bowl. Do you realize, guys, and Jim will really, they had a 60-yard practice field. That's all they had. They had a 60-yard practice field to practice on at UCLA. They got no money, okay? You can talk about a guy who was at an extreme disadvantage. That's Deshaun Foster. He had zero chance of success. No chance. And, he's a young guy who's a first-time head coach, and he got, I think he got absolutely no help. And to let him go right now, I think let's talk about the reasons why he wasn't successful, and I think that Vince Lombardi would have struggled at UCLA right now.
And I want to go back to something that you said earlier about sometimes when coaching changes are made, that the conventional wisdom will be that, well, they need to get ahead of it and go behind the scenes. I've been an AD. I can tell you when I got to Towson University in 2010 that we were going into the last year, not football, but it's basketball, and it's a major coach. Going into that 2010-11 season, it was 16 consecutive losing campaigns for Towson men's basketball, and coming into the last year of the contract of our then head coach, former Florida State, Iona, and DePaul head coach, Pat Kennedy. Okay, I knew going into that season that barring a major transformation in a lot of ways, and it wasn't just wins and losses, okay, let's be honest. That's how you evaluate a program. Barring that type of transformation, I was going to be making a coaching change. I already had my list, to your point, Brew. I already had my list in my desk. I hired a consultant, not a search firm, but I hired a consultant in Eddie Fogler, former Carolina Dean Smith, Vanderbilt, South Carolina head coach, Wichita State. I hired him to help me sort through things, kind of a guide, but he wasn't telling me who to hire. But it wasn't stopping me from doing all that. We're talking week 3 in the season. Who is Virginia Tech? Who is Whit Babcock, the athletics director at Virginia Tech, who curiously, guys, and think about this, when the release was put out on Brent Pry, it wasn't the athletic director who was making a comment. It was the president. It was the president of Virginia Tech who was commenting, which tells me that, hey, maybe Whit Babcock, even though his contract goes through 2029, maybe he's not safe. It was the same in the spring this past year whenever they started to name awards for the Student Athlete Advisory Committee at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill after Bubba Cunningham. I looked at some of my friends, I said, Bubba's in trouble. And it wasn't too long before the group came behind the scenes, and now all of a sudden Steve Newmark is the new executive associate AD in waiting at the University of North Carolina. I just had never bought into the fact that you're going to get any kind of jump on anybody by being a public hurricane for your program. Donors, that's a little bit different. And I'm telling you, donors are crazy. You guys have been around. You've been around a lot of things. What is a story, Tim Brewster, that you have seen over the course of your career that you could share with us that kind of explains how boosters in 2025 here in the mid-20s are maybe overstepping their bounds or maybe have a little bit more of an amplified voice than what they had in the past?
These people are giving money. They're giving large sums of money, okay, to programs, all right? And they're expecting to see real rewards from the money that they're giving the program. And if a team is not winning, right now, the University of Texas, they're not real fired up at the University of Texas. They got booed on Saturday. Can you even imagine that the University of Texas, who started the season as the number 1 team in the country, they've got a young developmental quarterback, in Arch Manning that they're giving a hard time to. Are you kidding me? it's just absolutely crazy how out of whack the expectations are because of the money given. And this is the deal. Okay, if these guys are given money, and if they're not winning, they're going to stop giving the money. The money's going to dry up. And then, okay, then where we go from there? Because without money, without large sums of money, you got no chance to win in this day and time.
Jim, what about you? When you were at the University of Florida, you guys won a national championship in '96, but then a few years later, man, it really changed for Steve Spurrier, and people even came after the ball coach. Did that surprise you?
Well, it didn't surprise me because we created a situation when you win 7 SECs and a national championship, the expectations grow exponentially, and that's what's happened around our country right now. Is we need to understand, and fans need to understand that this is college football. It is not pro football. Pro football, the monies are divided up and it's basically equal money in pro football. Well, guess what? In college football, the money's not equal. When you start talking about the top programs in this country, the Ohio States, the Georgias, and et cetera, and you go through all those, they got lots and lots of money to spend on their roster right now and their facilities, et cetera. Let's go back. We talked about the two programs that have fired a coach in the third week of the season. They both lack money right now. So at some point, whether it's going to include Virginia Tech or whether it's going to include UCLA in the movement, we're going to have a split. We're going to have the super conferences, and we're going to have pro football too. And that's going to become what college football is all about, because without the monies, you can't compete. You can't buy enough players. And we have free agency in college football every single year. Pro football, now you're under contract, so you may have one opportunity to be a free agent. In college football, you're a free agent every year.
The thing about it now with college football is that every single year you have a brand new team. Every year it's a brand new roster. The number one term that we talk about now is roster development. Maintaining your roster. Instead of player development, it's who can I keep? Who am I losing? I'm getting a brand new team. And I think from a culture perspective, Mike, from a locker room perspective, golly, it's challenging. Jim, you agree with that?
Brew, there's no doubt about that. To try to say, and I'm going to use North Carolina for example, to say that you're going to bring in a brand new coaching staff and you're going to transition 70 players on your roster, and you think that you're going to be good. Well, you're going to be average at best right now, it's extremely difficult, even in pro football. And I'm going to use this example again. You have a 53-man roster. But your 53-man roster does not completely or even halfway turn over every year. So it's so different, and maintaining a culture this day and time and recruiting your roster and maintaining the roster. I don't know how the people at East Carolina and App State and at Elon's and places around the country, I don't know how they're going to continue to do it. Because let's face it, if you have a player right now at a non-Power 4 and even at a Power 4 school that's having success, then somebody's recruiting them right now. I can guarantee you that.
I'm recruiting right now. I'm recruiting right now. I'm going to coach in December. I'm going to take a job in December, and I'm going to have my ducks in a row. I'm going to know exactly where every player is. I'm going to know exactly, I'm going to have been able to have contact with the players because hell, I'm not working for anybody right now. Hell, I can talk to whoever the hell I want to, and so getting ahead of the game is absolutely critical. And that's, heck, that's what we got to do.
Looking for real deal local flavor in Wilmington? Head to the Original Saltworks restaurant, run by Bob Hubbard and serving up Southern staples since the 1970s. Hot grits, buttery biscuits, juicy burgers and dogs. It's fast, it's fresh, and it's full of bold North State pride. Open for breakfast and lunch 7 days a week, always starting at 7 a.m. It's the original Saltworks on Oleander Drive in Wilmington.
Excuse me. I love sports. But sometimes, like when a t-shirt cannon hits me square in the nachos, I wonder, is Sport Clips better than sports?
Because sports plus a hot steamed towel beats sports plus hot exploding cheese.
I like your shirt.
Thanks. It was free. Sport Clips, it's a game changer.
Guys, one of the things that I really enjoy to do from time to time is to go back and watch classic clips on YouTube. And one of the coaches that I love to watch is Bob Knight, because he was always very unfiltered, raw, combative, maybe overly aggressive at times, but he's sitting up there and he's a basketball genius. And he's being questioned by people in the audience. This is back in the 70s and 80s and the 90s. He's being questioned by people who just don't know what they're talking about to the level that they believe they do. Doesn't mean that their impressions or their opinions are not very important, but they're maybe not as refined as they need to be. This past week, a coach that I worked with for 3 years at the University of Cincinnati, hired him out of Central Michigan along with our executive team at the University of Cincinnati, came out and he went after the media at LSU. We're talking about the Bayou Bengals head coach, Brian Kelly. Now, he came back first of the week and he apologized because some administrator like me told him to go in there and make nice, because you don't want to have, an enemy in the media because they buy ink by the barrel. It's got to be maddening. For all the things that we've discussed so far today, you don't get any funding. You're having to re-recruit your own roster. Go out and recruit high schools, other college teams' rosters. You're having to find a needle in the haystack. And then I got some ham and egger over here who is wiping mayonnaise off of his shirt while he's asking me a question and telling me that I can't run the football. But gentlemen, it is tough as a former member of the media and an AD to sit there and to go into some of these media rooms right now and listen to the questions or the quality of questions that are coming at these head coaches, especially right after a game. Dave Doran at NC State doesn't even do a live in-person Q&A after the game. It's all done off of Zoom, which is something very unique, I guess, in this technology times. But Brew, last year you're sitting there in Charlotte. You take over for Biff Poggi. Congrats to Biff. He got the big record-setting win as the Michigan interim head coach this past weekend. But you're having to take some of those flaming arrows coming right at your forehead. What's that like?
As a football coach, we spend 24 hours a day, 7 days a week studying our craft. Okay, these newspaper reporters and the people involved in the media, they just don't know the game like a coach. But this is the thing I learned, Mike, is when I first took the job at the University of Minnesota, Tony Dungy was a Minnesota Golden Gopher, and I was blessed to have the opportunity to sit down with Coach Dungy and talk, because the media in Minneapolis is very challenging. They're not all like Sid Hartman. They're all, it can be very, very challenging, and just exactly what you're saying, the questions asked. Well, Tony said to me, he said, Brew, he said, you're going to lose, okay? Do not get into any type of verbal warfare with the media, because you're going to lose the battle. And, he just said, it's not worth it. They don't know. And so, he said to me, and I don't think anybody in the world keeps their composure better than Coach Dungy. He said to me, Brew, I know your head wants to pop off. You want to tell them all they don't know what the hell they're talking about. Why are you going to ask a dumbass question like that? All that stuff. But he said again, keeping your composure is the whole key to it. And, I love Coach Knight. I love the example you used about him. How about the other night? I don't know if you saw Notre Dame, okay, Texas A&M. And the head football coach at Texas A&M picked up a chair. And I'm going to tell you what, he would have made Bobby proud. He would have made him proud. He threw that chair. And I'm telling you what. And so, Mike Elko, he struggled with his composure at that moment in the game the other night. Hell of a game, by the way. But getting back, Mike, to what you're saying is just, again, understanding maturity level. Young coaches, a lot of times they want to get stuff out as opposed to really thinking about. Take a deep breath. Always to me, and Tony said this, and I would go sit down before you go into the press conference. Review the stats for the game, take a deep breath, relax. Going straight to the press conference after talking to your team, not a good idea.
Well, it's funny you'd mention that, because at Cincinnati, very early in Brian Kelly's tenure, in 2008, we went to the Orange Bowl. In 2009, we played Urban Meyer and the Florida Gators in Tim Tebow's last game in the All-State Sugar Bowl. But that 2007 season was pretty interesting because he was getting to know the team. He'd come in after the game, and he'd go into a little room, and he'd talk to his coaching staff. And it'd be pretty heated in there. And I'd say maybe the intensity level in that room was about an 11. And then he'd come out, and the guys could hear everything that was going on. Then he'd walk through the room, and he'd become like a 4. And he'd have like a complete personality shift. That was an amazing thing to me. And later on, as we were talking about ways that we would handle the media, the advice that we gave Brian was just pretend that the media is like you're talking to your kids, because in a lot of ways you are. Now, in your case, Jim, you've worked with two of the most classy coaches that I've ever been around. I love Steve Spurrier. I mean, I absolutely adore Steve Spurrier. Might be one of the favorite football coaches that I've ever worked with. I just love the guy. Our time in Orlando together, Jim, with Steve was incredible. You've also had a chance to work with another guy who is a guru in terms of David Cutcliffe, what he's done at various stages of his career, both as an assistant and as a head coach. Are there any memories that you have with Spurrier or Cut that you could share about how they dealt with that? Because I would think that though they have very similar backgrounds, they probably approached it a little bit differently.
Well, that's an interesting question, Mike. Both of those guys had great composure after a game. Coach Spurrier was, and I can honestly say this, that I worked for Steve Spurrier for 19 years, and he has never in 19 years never yelled and raised his voice at me or did any of that kind of stuff. His composure is unreal. Now, his expectations for what the way he expected your players to play and for you to recruit was off the charts, without a doubt. So Cut was a little more explosive and could get loud at times and all, but he knew when he could and when it was the right time to do that. But they both did a tremendous job of managing the media after a game. Now, let me say this now, Brew, and I think you'll agree with this. We as coaches, we spend hours upon hours watching the opponent, trying to decipher what they're doing. Now, the basics of the game are pretty much the same. As a defensive coach, we're either going to play 2 deep, 3 deep, man to man. We're going to blitz. We're going to bring 5. We're going to bring 6. But there is a multiplicity of ways that we can do those things. So we spend all this time watching the opponent, figuring out what they're doing and when they're going to do it. And sometimes we're right, sometimes we're wrong, but yet we're going to have somebody walk in from the media that does not have any idea about what they're doing. And they're going to ask why you couldn't run the ball against the University of Florida. Well, guess what? The University of Florida practices too. They've got good players also. So, the fact that winning a game this day and time is not good enough. It's how you win the game is what has become important.
Coaches have to be careful about talking too much about a game that they haven't seen with their own eyes on videotape. Okay, I think so many coaches make mistakes in going in a locker room and ripping his assistant coaches, talking, and not having seen the game on video is never as good as you thought. and it's never as bad as you thought. Okay. And so, I find that, Mike, the press conference that I did on Monday was so much more enlightening than the press conference I did after games, because I was very, I wanted to be very matter of fact after games, but I didn't want to say too much because, golly, you make mistakes. You think a kid didn't play good, and I'll be darned if, shoot, he didn't grade out 95%. And you think, well, this position group right here was awful in the game. And you know what? At the end of the day, hell, they're pretty damn good, and so I think that, again, Jim's talking about composure, and you're talking about, Coach Spurrier I had the blessing of being around him. I mean, he's the absolute best, and a guy like Coach Dungy, but again, just keeping your composure and not speaking out of turn. So many coaches just get caught up in the emotion of the moment. Let's just, like I said, just take a deep breath and relax. Let's look at the tape, and then we'll have some really educated stuff to talk about after we've seen the tape.
Hey folks, David Glenn here. Game day just got easier thanks to NC by Train. Whether you're headed to Charlotte, Raleigh, Durham, or Greensboro, skip the traffic and enjoy the ride. You get free Wi-Fi, comfy seats, and direct access to top sports towns, all at great prices. Learn more at ncbytrain.org and travel smarter to your next game. NC by Train. Go Connect. Michael Berard, Managing Director Investments with the Founders Group at Stifel, works with a select group of high net worth individuals and institutions to develop and implement investment plans tailored to their specific objectives and risk tolerances. If you are interested in highly personalized, well-researched guidance and outstanding personal service, you can contact Michael at 984-364-2002. That's 984-364-2002. Stifel Nicholas and Company Incorporated, member SIPC and NYSE.
Gentlemen, let's look ahead to another big rivalry week here in the bold North State. Duke and NC State getting together again. Last week, the Big Four rivalry series got underway down at the Legacy Stadium in Winston-Salem. Our old North State tailgate was on site with David Glenn as we watched the Wolfpack get the win over Wake Forest. Now, Dave Doran and the Wolfpack have the opportunity to get another dub in this series against the Duke Blue Devils. Jim, how much of a must-win is this for Manny Diaz and the Blue Devils to get back on track after a disappointing loss last week on the road at Tulane, but also to maintain the Duke status as being the perceived best team in the state of North Carolina?
Every game is critical. There's not a single game when you're only playing 12 regular season games. It's not like pro football. In college football, you one or two losses eliminate you from championship opportunities. Whereas in pro football, they play 17 regular season games now. You can lose 4 or 5 games and still win your division. That's hard to do in college football right now. So every game is critical, and I think this is an especially critical game for not only Duke, but also the Wolfpack. And here's the reason I'm saying this about the Wolfpack. The Wolfpack is 3-0 right now and has probably played the toughest schedule of any of the teams in the state of North Carolina, because all three of their opponents have been big time opponents. So I think this is a critical point for them, and here's the reason why. If they can win at Duke, that makes them 4-0 right now, and then their next 2 games after that are Virginia Tech and Campbell. So they could possibly, with this win, be 6-0 going to Notre Dame in midseason, which will be a critical point to see where Notre Dame is in their advancement, as Notre Dame sits 0-2 right now. But Notre Dame's played 2 pretty good football teams also that they've lost to. So I think it's a critical game for the Wolfpack and the Blue Devils.
last week, and I think that Coach Brew was one of the few that probably said that Tulane would beat Duke. They ran into a buzzsaw. They went down there, and from a psychological standpoint, they were behind the eight ball. Their quarterback at Tulane said, "No, I'm not going to stay here and play. I'm going to take the money and I'm going to go to Duke." Okay. Well, I'm going to just tell you, the game is so psychological. That group of kids at Tulane down there in New Orleans was jacked up last week, and they got after Duke. They hammered Duke, and so, it's such a psychological game. And I totally, right now, Manny's really behind the eight ball. Duke's behind the eight ball. John Summerall at Tulane is probably going to be one of the hottest coaches in America in this coaching cycle right now. I think there's going to be a whole bunch of people come after him. He's done a heck of a job. So Manny's lost. He didn't lose to two, bad football teams. He's lost to a couple of really good football teams, but he's got to get back on track big time this week. And I don't think that NC State is a great football team. I think they're a solid team. They're well coached. I think Dave Dorn does a tremendous job in preparing his team to play to win. But I think that they're very beatable, and I think that Duke's going to have a good chance this week if they come out and play really well. It's a big football game. I'm excited to see that game.
Another game that people are looking forward to seeing this week in the ACC is Syracuse and their head coach Fran Brown on the road in Death Valley North against the Clemson Tigers. You talk about a program right now that's feeling a little bit of heat. Old Dabo's high noon showdown with the Orange from up north is not the biggest battle that he's fighting this week. They have a lot of political upheaval on the Clemson campus, but it's causing a lot of angst and vitriol around the Tigers program. And right now they have 2 early losses. What is the mindset right now of Dabo Swinney, who is not an X's and O's guy? He is an organizational guy, he's a motivational guy, but he really depends on his coordinators to set those strategies. If you're Dabo, Brew, how are you approaching this game and trying to do a hard reset on the 2025 season and find maybe somebody that can reach Cade Klubnik, because that guy was a Heisman contender, at least on paper, going into this 2025 season, and he's played like anything but thus far.
Dabo's got to be very, very careful right now with his words, with how he verbalizes exactly what this program is and the place it's at. And I think what he's got to do is he's got to do a great job of lifting that program up right now. He's got to be the guy that says, hey, you know what? We've lost a couple of games. We've lost a couple, but I'm going to tell you what, we're a good football team. And you're dead on right, Mike. The biggest guy that he's got to reach is Klubnik. He's got to carve that offense, get that offense in a place where he can get this guy some success. He's got to get this guy some success. He's got to be able to create some throws, some explosive plays. They're just not getting enough explosive plays right now out of Klubnik and the whole, in the offensive football team. But I think that they're a very, very fragile football team right now from a psychological standpoint. And this thing could go bad the other way. But I think, Dabo's a veteran, experienced coach. He knows what winning's supposed to look like. He knows what winning preparation looks like. And right now, the psychological piece, that's where Dabo's got to be at his best right now.
The other noon games on Saturday: Bowling Green at Louisville, SMU at TCU, Wofford at Virginia Tech, Kent State at Florida State. But North Carolina goes on the road down to UCF. The first time they'll leave the friendly confines of the Bold North State here in 2025. This is a 3:30 game on Fox. And Jim Collins, UCF is a pretty tough place to play. We've seen a lot of action in the bounce house down there, and this will be a very big test for North Carolina, which has not played a very good schedule since Labor Day. They played against Charlotte and they played against Richmond. How different is it? And I want you both to talk on this. We'll start with you, Jim. How different is it to take your team on the road, the whole 9 yards, the bus to the airport, the flight, the hotels, the walkthroughs, all of that? How tough is it to go on the road as opposed to playing at home? Or is it sometimes a welcome opportunity to kind of do what we talked about a few times over today's show, to have that kind of a reset and to get your team sparked in a different way?
It's always an advantage to play at home. You stay in your routine. You're not out of your routine. You practice at the same time. You eat at the same time. You go to the hotel. Your meetings are all at the same time. Anytime you go on the road, you're off your schedule, especially with a new coaching staff and all the new players that have never done this together and don't understand the routine. So having your schedule for North Carolina, in my opinion, the players needed to know what the Friday schedule and the travel schedule was at the beginning of the week, so they could begin to prepare to go and do what they have to do on Friday, getting to Orlando, where they're going to stay, and et cetera. So I think it'll be a challenge for them to do that for the first time. And anytime you give me the opportunity to play at home, I don't give a crap how bad we're playing. Then we're gonna stay in our routine and want to play at home. So I think it'll be a challenge for the Tar Heels to go on the road and play in Orlando.
What do you think, Brew? Going into a hostile environment like the Bounce House can be, does it have the reputation that the fans like to think it does, that it's a tough place to play?
I think this will be, a great indicator for Bill Belichick and the Tar Heels for the rest of the season on what type of football team they're going to be. Okay. Are they ready to go into, the state of Florida, where it's going to be hot? It's going to be, they're going to have a great crowd. They're going to have a bunch of people against them. And how are they going to hold up? Can they go on the road and win a big football game? And I think that this is going to be huge in letting Coach Belichick know where they go from here the rest of the season.
They have played on the road at Charlotte, so they have been through this routine. But the big thing is there's a big difference between getting on the bus and riding 2.5 hours to Charlotte and getting on an airplane and flying to Orlando, getting everything coordinated. And I'm sure they've got a great coordinated system in how they'll handle that. But it'll be a challenge playing against the Knights in the Bounce House for them. And we talk about Carolina and the dominant defense that they played last week against a very, very average Richmond team, and they were dominant. Their front dominated the game, so it'll be interesting to see how they play against a legitimate Division I football team.
Other games in the ACC this week: Temple is on the road against Brent Key's undefeated Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. That's the CW game at 4:30. Florida and Miami, guys. You both have been Gators. You both don't like Miami, so this ought to be a lot of fun for you guys to watch. That's the 7:30 game on Saturday night. Both of you, give me a great Florida-Miami story. It could be from off the field or on the field, but what are your best memories of the University of Florida and the University of Miami going at it on the football gridiron?
I was part of it at Florida State and Miami, and that was obviously a huge rivalry. And then with the Gators, I'm going to tell you what, this is an extremely, extremely important game for the Gators. I think that coming off the 20-10 loss to LSU last week really puts Billy Napier in a precarious situation. And now he's got a really good Miami football team. I'm just going to tell you what now, that's going to present a tremendous challenge to Coach Napier and the Florida team. And I'm going to tell you what now, Mario Cristobal is going to have those guys lit and ready to roll. They have a highly acclaimed quarterback at Florida who they need to play well to have any chance. Okay. Jim just said they're going to play 6 ranked opponents in a row coming up. Okay. If that kid throws 5 picks, okay, like he did again on the road against LSU, I mean, holy cow, they got zero chance. They got zero chance. And so I think right now this thing is accumulated on Billy a bunch. And I'm not so sure. I don't think that there's a whole lot of patience there for where where he's at right now in this process at Florida.
There is no patience in the Gator faithful now. They want results. And results have not been what they expect at this point in time. Whether Scott Strickland yields to the pressure of the fans and the boosters and the people that are giving lots of money or not is yet to be seen, because Scott Strickland just got a new contract. He's pretty settled that he's going to be at the University of Florida for a long, long time. So whether he yields to that pressure or not this early in the season, I don't know. But I will say this, if it continues to go the way it's going at this point in time, it will be hard for Billy to hang on.
You've both been assistant coaches. Brew, you've been a head coach. How do head coaches' personalities change when they're going through that type of external consternation and pressure?
Insecurity is a disease in our profession that is like runs rampant. Okay. If you got to feel good about yourself and feel good about, what you're doing as a head football coach, and you've got to put your blinders on, and you can't be hearing the noise. You got to eliminate the noise, the outside noise, because I'm going to tell you what, at a place like Florida right now, Billy, holy cow. I mean, I'm going to promise you, Jim will tell you, it's Dan Mullen won 10 games in a row, 3 years in a row. Okay. And then in year 4 wins 6 and gets fired.
Well, let me give you these stats. Okay. And it's interesting. I just pulled this up.
Yep.
In the first 40 games of their coaching careers at the University of Florida, Dan Mullen was 31-9. Will Muschamp was 24-16. Urban Meyer was 31-9. Jim McElwain did not make it to game 40. He was 22-12. Billy Napier is 20-20. So what do you think is going to happen? I mean, there's
no.
If I were, he's dead man walking, unless they can turn it around right now and go down and beat Miami this weekend, and then he has no chance to survive, because his buyout for a place like Florida, I think his buyout's only like $19 million. Now I know $19 million is a lot of money, but for a place like that, $19 million is they can handle that.
The last 2 games in the ACC this week. 7:30 game on the ACC network, Stanford at Virginia, and then Cal and San Diego State will do ACC After Dark at 10:30 p.m. Fellas, great stuff as always. We've covered the big wins, the tough losses, coaching changes, the Elon spotlight, national headlines, and of course the rivalries that define the state. That's what makes Bold North State football very special. As always, Jim Collins, we appreciate you coming in from the coast. And Brew, we appreciate the extra effort that you gave us this week in the middle of the great technology blackout in Pittsburgh to come out to your car. That's going the extra mile. That's going the extra mile. That's what we expect from Coach Brew and from Coach Jim right here on Bold North State Football Daily. Guys, enjoy your week. Enjoy football. We'll see you back next week.
This has been Bold North State Football Daily, an exclusive presentation of the North Carolina Sports Network. Make sure you follow us on social media at the NC Sports Net, and check out our website that is wall-to-wall coverage of North Carolina sports at ncsportsnetwork.com. Our foundational partner is the North Carolina Pork Council, raising the bacon, raising the bar. Telling the stories of the Bold North State, this is the North Carolina Sports Network.